A happy Wednesday to you. It is May the 4th. Ryan Jesperson here with you. John Hicks, our technical producer.
May the 4th be with you.
Yeah, you knew it was coming at some point. I wondered if when we showed up today, if you'd be in like a stormtrooper outfit or you'd be dressed like Chewbacca or something like that. But yeah, it is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. Is this a day that you take deadly seriously?
No, but I do love Star Wars. My wife hates that I watch it all the time. So I watched it last night as I was doing prep. I had, the new series, The Book of Boba Fett, on which we all want to be as good as The Mandalorian, but just isn't.
The Book of Boba Fett, so that's the follow-up to
It's the follow-up from when he dies in the movie. Well, I don't want to say anything.
Did you just drop a major? Do we need to start the show over again and cut this out of the podcast?
Well, no, if there's a show, obviously he didn't die, right? So I don't think I'm ruining anything there. But yeah, it's just not as good as The Mandalorian, and that's because of Baby Yoda. You can't beat Baby Yoda.
The Mandalorian is so good. So
Incredible.
That's why. But I feel like people will say, like, are you a Star Wars fan? I go, yeah, like a huge fan. And people go, oh, really? And then everyone takes it as a bit of a challenge. Like, well, I'm not like a huge fan. Like there's, like local bars or things like that will put on like Star Wars trivia night. And I always think I would love to participate, but I would get stomped. And I think I'd be pretty good, but I wouldn't. I would have no idea at all.
I'm not on that level either.
Yeah. If they were like, which trilogy lines up into, 4, 5, 6, and then it goes to 1, and I'd be like, I don't know.
Do you know that this character was related to? I don't.
I don't know. But a happy Star Wars Day to everybody that's celebrating. It reminds me, I don't know what my mind we didn't plan to talk about this. My mind automatically goes to the city of Lethbridge, which is probably trying to move on from this. You remember that, though? There was like the cantina themed pub in Lethbridge, and one of the stats, it's so funny, but it's not funny at all if you were that person, or for that matter, the chief of police in Lethbridge at the time. Mm-hmm. But you remember one of the servers at the cantina themed pub was dressed in a stormtrooper outfit on May 4th. Yeah. This has to have been, 4 or 5 years ago or something like that? And the cops, if I remember correctly, didn't they end up sort of like taking them down at gunpoint, like in front of, and the person's yelling like, I have a hard time getting down in the stormtrooper costume, cut me some slack, and it ended up being
because they had like a plastic gun or something.
A bit of a black eye on the Lethbridge Police Service. Anyway, Lethbridge is like, did you really? The show is 120 seconds old, and you already got to be dragging us. And Lethbridge probably every May the 4th goes, oh, somebody's going to bring this up. But congratulations to everybody celebrating. We hope you have a great day and have a little fun with it. Life's all about finding those balances. We have a great show in store, including Ray Parker Jr., who's going to be joining us with filmmaker Fran Strine coming up in about 35 minutes from right now. And Ray Parker Jr., the star, the feature, the focus of Fran's documentary, Who You Gonna Call? It's the opening night feature at NorthwestFest coming up this Friday, which we're really excited to be the presenting sponsor for. Real Talk is Canada's longest-running documentary film festival. Ray Parker Jr.'s life story's phenomenal. He is, obviously, the guy who gave the world the Ghostbusters theme song.
Typecast.
But, like we talked about the other day, and we'll ask him, because typecast is a heavy word. We'll ask him if I don't want to get too into the film right now. I want to let him lay it out.
Sure.
But we were talking yesterday about Bobby McFerrin and Don't Worry, Be Happy, but how Bobby McFerrin has this brilliant, and Don't Worry, Be Happy is part of it, and probably paid for a good part of his the lifestyle that he's enjoyed. And Ray Parker Jr. would say the same thing and does say the same thing in the film, Who You Gonna Call? But when you hear of certain artists, you think about them, you hear their name, you think of one song or one moment through their history. And Ray Parker Jr.'s his career,
so much more than that.
Phenomenal.
Singer, songwriter, producer,
the guy's 17 years old. His parents we'll ask him about this. His parents want him to go to college. They wanted him to be the first college graduate in the family, right? Yeah. And he feels strongly that he's got to pursue a career in music because there are opportunities in front of him. Things are happening.
Sure.
So he steps away from that college dream. He says he breaks his dad's heart in the process. He's 17, turning 18 years old. He's on the road touring with Stevie Wonder and the Rolling Stones.
Insane.
18 years old. This guy's on stage with Mick Jagger, Stevie Wonder, saying I've never experienced anything like this before in my life. Just an amazing story. And coming up in just a few minutes, what developed into a Real Talk Roundtable. Typically, Fridays we bring you our Real Talk Roundtable, and we will a couple of days from now talking about innovation. We're looking forward to our innovation Real Talk Roundtable, and circle your calendars in 2 Fridays from now on the 13th. we'll be welcoming the strategists back to the show. That's going to be great. But today's Real Talk Roundtable will focus on access to abortion in Canada. Everybody's talking about this story that was broken, the exclusive from Politico. We talked about it yesterday out of the gates on the show. Politico reporting a couple of days ago that the Supreme Court in the United States has voted to overturn abortion rights. This draft opinion shows it was people are taking issue with the word leaked, and that's fine. It was leaked. It was provided to Politico by a whistleblower, essentially, that knew that the American people and people around the world would be extremely interested in knowing where the nation's highest court is moving on Roe v. Wade. But this is a show proudly based out of Canada. We are Canadians. As we'll show you in just a second, some politicians in particular are suggesting that everybody should just chill out about the Supreme Court's decision in the U.S. This is Canada. It doesn't impact us. We thought if we're doing our job, we'd better ask a couple of people that are in this realm, that work in this area. And so we'll be joined by Joyce Arthur, Meghan, Doherty, and Robyn Schwarz, and I'll introduce you to the three of them in just a second. This show happens because of amazing sponsors like the team at Bitcoin Well that each and every day show up here to make sure that we're able to bring you the real talk that you expect. And you've heard CEO Adam O'Brien on this show before. He welcomes real talk about Bitcoin, too. He knows that not everybody understands it. Not everybody is down with the idea. Not everybody sees Bitcoin as a part of their future plan. But if you ask the questions that matter, do you have the answers that would be satisfactory? Bitcoin Well welcomes them all. I recommend you ask for Benny when you book your appointment under the sponsors tab. Look for Bitcoin Well at RyanJesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Want to let you know we'll also be getting into the results today from our most recent Get Real question of the week. We asked you about Alberta politics this time around, and what do you make of what's happening with Premier Jason Kenney's leadership review? Hundreds of you chimed in. We appreciate that, and we'll be sharing with you what the consensus opinions were on that. Plus, of course, we'll take you out to Jasper today, part of MyJasper Memories. This is the story that everybody's talking about. I mean, literally around the world. After this explosive report, an exclusive from Politico, you can read it at Politico.com. Supreme Court has voted to overturn abortion rights. It prompted responses from, it seemed, virtually everybody, including elected representatives. This is what the Prime Minister of Canada had to say yesterday. This was the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau tweeting to his 6 million followers or so a message to Canadians about how this applied to Canadian legislation and how this applied to the right to choose. Says the Prime Minister, the right to choose is a woman's right and a woman's right alone. Every woman in Canada has a right to a safe and legal abortion. We'll never back down from protecting and promoting women's rights in Canada and around the world. That from the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, rumor has it that Conservative MPs were gag ordered yesterday by the party's interim leader, Candice Bergen, that they were ordered to not make statements on this. Who knows if it's true or not, but one prominent MP out of Calgary, Michelle Rempel-Garner, had this to say anyway. This is Michelle Rempel-Garner yesterday to my 2 American stepdaughters. You know her husband is American. She says, your father and I firmly support you in fighting for your equality and right to safely manage your reproductive health. We love you so much. I will always and have always fought for the same for the women I represent in Canada. So Michelle Rempel-Garner leaving no question about where she lands on this and issuing a statement there. The subject also came up in Alberta's legislature yesterday when the leader of the official opposition, former Premier Rachel Notley, wanted to get Premier Jason Kenney on the record. And here's how that exchange went down yesterday.
Speaker, Albertans woke up today deeply concerned over the news that the U.S. Supreme Court may overturn Roe versus Wade. I'm one of those people, as are all of my colleagues. The landmark decision to legalize abortion was a victory for all women. Now it's under threat. Our bodies, our rights, our choice must be protected. Mr. Speaker, I am hoping the Premier can stand today and reaffirm to those concerned Albertans our commitment to a woman's right to choose. Will he join me in condemning this attack on reproductive rights in North America?
The Honourable the Premier. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is asking about a potential decision in a foreign court in another country. Mr. Speaker, that is for the American legal and political system. there's been no change in policy with respect to that procedure in Alberta, and none has been proposed.
Okay, so that was Alberta's premier yesterday. Obviously, the answer, I think, unsatisfactory to a lot of people that were expecting more, but no surprise. I mean, if you look at Jason Kenney's personal history when it comes to his anti-abortion activism, most especially as a college student, but moving all the way through, you can understand why some people wanted to hear what he had to say about this. That's just in our little pocket of the world. Let's talk to three Canadians who have been keeping an eye on this story long before Politico's report surfaced. Joyce Arthur is the founder and executive director of the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada. It protects the legal right to abortion on request. Before founding the Abortion Rights Coalition, Joyce ran the Pro-Choice Action Network in British Columbia for a decade. Meghan Doherty is the Director of Global Policy and Advocacy at Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights. She's got more than 20 years' experience advocating for abortion rights in Canada, in Ireland, and in the United Nations. Meghan's joining us this morning from Halifax, Nova Scotia. And Robyn Schwarz is an academic and a community organizer located, coming to us this morning from southwestern Ontario. She holds a doctorate in Canadian history, a master's in Canada-American relations from Western University, which is certainly interesting in applicable nature to this conversation. Reproductive justice guides Robyn's writing, research, and campaign interests. To the three of you, thank you so much for being here. Joyce, let's start with you. People are saying, okay, this is a shocking story or a shocking development, or maybe not so much if you've been paying attention to the Supreme Court and trends in the United States. But does this actually apply to Canada, or are we just keeping an eye on our American neighbors and talking about it like humans are wont to do? What do you think?
I think it does apply in several ways. Like, first of all, it's created this huge media storm. There's a lot of public outrage, not just down in the U.S., but in Canada and around the world, I should say. And it could affect us in other various ways. I mean, legally, our systems are very different, so I wouldn't expect it's going to affect our laws at all. But it might affect access. Like, for example, people talk about American women coming up here for abortions. And, our clinics are like smaller. They don't have the capacity. They wouldn't be able to handle a huge influx of Americans. And it's not that easy anyway for Americans to come up. They need a passport, they need to complete the procedure, they need to cover travel expenses. So it's not really an answer, but it could put pressure on our clinics, and that could be a problem. And I worry too about the rest of the world, because, and Canada as well, because this kind of decision in the US, if it actually happens, can really embolden the anti-choice movements across the world, giving them more confidence in trying to perhaps restrict abortion in other countries, if not Canada.
Yeah, Meghan, I mean, Joyce touches on something there. That's the momentum here. It's the message that it sends, which is probably a big reason why this is resonating so strongly with so many people. How are you wrapping your mind around what you're seeing?
So I think like all of us here today, we were pretty devastated to read the draft decision that came out. And what we were thinking about at Action Canada is how this is going to impact people differently in the United States and in Canada. So we know for the most part, when abortion becomes restricted, it doesn't stop abortions. What it does is causes more harm to people who have the least access to services in the first place. So that includes people on low incomes, young people, migrants. And so when we're thinking about that in the context of Canada, what we really want to be focusing on here is how do we improve the access to abortion in Canada? So as Joyce said, our legal and policy context is very different, but we still have issues of access that we need to address. And we need to be calling out the anti-choice organizations and movements that are coordinating transnationally, are funded transnationally, and we are also concerned that they will be emboldened by these developments in the United States, and those organizations cannot be allowed to infiltrate in more into the public discourse here in Canada.
Robyn, do you see that happening? I mean, I know that you keep an eye on developments outside of Canada and then on developments within Canada as well. The use of the word emboldened, I think, applies here. What are you observing on Canadian soil, so to speak?
Yeah, so I'm definitely speaking kind of from a different perspective than Meghan and Joyce, in that I am an on-the-ground activist. Like, I don't get paid to do this work. I actually work for another nonprofit in mental health services. And I will say, just for folks, as I'm talking here, I have ADHD and my symptoms are absolutely terrible right now because it's May the 4th and I'm a Star Wars fan and an election's starting that I've been working towards for 4 years. And then this happened. And so if I seem a little off there today, that's why.
Robyn, can I say that just sounds like real life to me? It sounds like you're coming to the table like everybody else is with a million things going on right now, and you're trying to create the space in your brain, it sounds like, to dedicate some thought and even some opinion to this, but this is just part of real life, the way things go.
It is, yeah. And so for me, I've been doing this work in Waterloo Region and London, Ontario for the last couple of years, which have both been really on the ground sites because we've been directly targeted by anti-choice activists. Jonathan Van Maren, who is the communications director of the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform and is one of the worst anti-choice offenders in Canada and has been saying some of the anti-trans stuff we're now hearing for years. I've been following him. I've been going undercover. And I will say, I just sort of as a second thought here of things that were swirling in my head as I was listening to Joyce and Meghan talk. For me, I come at this as someone who has never lived in a Canada where abortion was illegal. I am 33 and I was born in 1989, the year after the Morgenthaler decision, in a hospital in Kelowna, BC, that is still protested every single Tuesday by people in my own community. So I grew up being told, oh, this is okay, in both senses, that both of these things could exist. And I'm here to tell you they can't, and that I am evidence and proof of that because I spent my whole life kind of wondering why this was the case. And that's why I've gone through all of this education journey and why I do this in my spare time between trying to get mental health funding for my community as well, because I don't think we're doing it right in Canada, and I'm really concerned based on the things that I've seen happen in the US in the last 30 years, where white feminists in particular have failed to center and prioritize the voices of people of color, of marginalized communities, of people with disabilities, neurodivergency. And I even look at with this panel today, my first thought was, oh, I agreed to be on an all-white panel, and that's a problem. I shouldn't have done that. And I think about someone who I care very much about, but doesn't know I care about her. And that's Nahanni Fontaine, who is a Indigenous woman who's an MLA in Manitoba, who has been sounding the alarm on these things in that province for years and has gotten very little support from the people on this screen. And so it is very important, I think. And this is where my hero and activist and someone I hope to one day call a friend, Loretta Ross, talks, who is the founder and creator of Reproductive Justice. She is working on this new framework called Calling In the Call Out Culture, because what we're doing isn't working and it is emboldening them. It's making it worse. And we need to figure out something before we end up in 1935. And that's me coming at this also as someone who has a Ph.D. in Canadian history, who understands social movements and is making these big connections, sitting at my desk at Western wondering why I'm being harassed by other students. Like, that's why I'm here. And I think that it's just very important we're having this conversation. So thank you, Ryan. Genuinely.
Yeah, no, you got it. And I appreciate your candor. Absolutely, Robyn. Joyce, Meghan, did either of you want to respond specifically to anything that Robyn said before we move on?
I'd just like to say that, I mean, ARC actually does work with Nahanni Fontaine in Winnipeg, and we do have a diverse membership, a diverse board. So that's I want to say something in respect of that in terms of Ryan showed at the top Prime Minister Trudeau's comment about a woman's right to choose, only a woman's right to choose. That's actually not true. It's also transgender people who need abortions as well, and we try to be very trans inclusive in our work. And coming to just talking about what the leaders are doing, it's good to see the leaders speak out, against what's happening in the U.S., which is a terrible tragedy. And but we need a lot more than that. There are some serious access problems here in Canada we need to address. And the Liberals made some promises in the last election, which are, I don't know, they're kind of dragging their feet. We'd like to see more action, faster action. They could do things like push the provinces to provide more abortion care and more sexual reproductive health care. For example, by increasing the health fund transfer to the provinces, attaching strings, asking them to implement sexual reproductive health programs. They can really enforce the Canada Health Act better than what they're doing. Make sure that abortions are funded in New Brunswick, which the province currently does not fund abortions at clinics, and also Ontario. Some of the clinics are not fully funded. There's so much that the federal government can do and provincial governments can well to access.
Meghan, you've, as mentioned when we introduced you, you've got 2 decades of experience advocating for abortion rights in Canada, in Ireland, at the United Nations. You've got a lot of experience in taking a look at jurisdictions and what's made available or what's funded, what's legal, what's not, different options that women pursue. Some of them obviously extremely troubling in the context of the health implications, the safety implications. I think one of the most obvious assertions that have been made by people over the past 48 hours, but it's an important one, is that abortion law or developments like we're seeing in the United States doesn't stop abortion. It just limits access to safe abortions, which is a point that's really important here to make. What do you think, Meghan, based on your experience here in advocacy, what typically stands in the way of improved access to these health services for women? Is it just the politically supercharged nature of it? Is it something else? Is it the pushback consistently that politicians see?
So I think it's a range of different things. But before I get there, I just also want to make a point about sort of the developments in the science and the medicine of access to abortion over the last 20 years, and that with medical abortion, that it's possible to have a safe but not legal abortion. And we see that in lots of other countries around the world where abortion may be restricted, that there are safe ways, but they are legally restricted. That's not the ideal scenario, because what you're effectively doing is criminalizing women. But I think that it's important that we emphasize that advancement in medicine. That is also not to discount the impact that unsafe abortion does have on women all around the world, and it does have deadly consequences. But there are distinctions and nuances to that I think it's really important that we emphasize. And then in thinking about, your question about what is standing in the way, well, I think it speaks to what Robyn was mentioning. It's not necessarily the politically charged environment that we often maybe associate with abortion. It's about economic justice. It's about racial justice. It is about access to comprehensive sexuality education. It is about our human rights. And so, when we're talking about abortion, it's part of this wider structural and systemic forms of discrimination that people experience. And that when we see that there are disparities in access, it's because of these reasons. And it's also related to how we're funding our health system, the priorities that we place on what's important in our society. Do we think that access to sexual and reproductive health and rights is important in our society? And if we do, which our politicians, many of whom are in power, are saying that they do, then we have to back that up by actually prioritizing it within the list of priorities at the federal, at the provincial, and at the local level. And so, often the work of advocacy is quite boring, because you're really looking at the details in terms of what it is that is required to make something better. And it's, the political, one-liners within the parliament and sound bites, those are handy for getting attention. But the hard work of actually building access and working with communities, finding out what the barriers are, working together to propose solutions. That is painstaking, long-term, and the most important work that we can do. And so I really would like to emphasize that, the layer of politics that are associated with abortion, that's not really where the attention needs to be. Like, let's focus on the people who are doing the really hard work of helping people and supporting people to claim their rights and access to the healthcare that they need, that they deserve, and they have a right to.
Yeah, I mean, is it fair to say that you would wish that politics could be pulled out of this, but that's almost an impossibility in matters like this? I mean, it's like asking for politics to, I'm not comparing the scenarios, but just as another potentially divisive or contentious issue and an extremely important issue would be harm reduction in Canada and supervised consumption in Canada. And you would love to see politics taken out of it. But at the same time, these are the decision makers when it comes to budgeting and funding and legislation and everything else, those structures, right? Robyn, you're nodding your head. You want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I do. And I want to shout out one of my favorite philosophers, Shannon Day, who wrote an amazing article in a book that I believe Joyce also has something in called Without Apology. It's a edited collection by Shannon Stetner. And it argues for just that, a harm reduction approach to abortion in Canada. And I actually read that article in the fall of 2016, right before Donald Trump was elected president, when we were told, I was studying history and studying American politics too, told that Hillary Clinton was for sure going to win. There was no way this was not going to happen. Absolutely. And then I sat the next morning with every single woman in my department, and none of them knew what to say. And that was when I realized we were in really big trouble, because all of the people I thought were going to be there to protect me and who had been doing the work to save these rights and protect them had no idea how to handle something like Donald Trump, no idea how to handle something like the anti-abortion movement in Canada starting right now and electing Sam Oosterhoff. And then I was writing articles about him in 2018, and people were telling me I was an extremist in my department. People were literally saying that to me. And so I think that Meghan's 100% right, and I think that the depoliticization, I don't know, I think that Canadians are really bad at being like, oh, we're not political, let's just not talk about it. And that's a part of our white civil identity, in that we don't like talking about racism. We pretend it's them, it's the other side, right? That's what I did my master's on. And so it's just very important, I think, that we as a community, and this, I guess, bringing it back to my home community of Kitchener, Ontario, we have one of the worst crisis pregnancy centers in Canada here. They're called the Dawn Center, and they just bought an ultrasound. And I have been working on an article on them for 2 years undercover that will be coming out. And I might have just ruined it, but you know what? I'm going to say it because I've had things before where I kept it to myself because I was doing the good, hard activist labor. Like Meghan said, it takes time. It took us 18 years to make abortion legal here. 18 years of women organizing. We had the best socialist feminist movement in the world in 1988, and it's gone. We need to fix that. And so in contrast, we also have Shore Center, which is the best Planned Parenthood in Canada, in my opinion, who has created choiceconnect.ca, which is a free website that people can use to find any provider, and they don't have to call anyone because, sorry, those of us under 30 hate talking on the phone, and those of us who have neurodivergency really hate talking on the phone. And the idea of calling someone and saying, I need help with abortion, is the bravest thing you can do. And I want anyone listening to this to know that, and know that I love them, and that I am so thankful and proud of the work that we do on the Access Line. I'm one of Meghan's volunteers, and I've been doing that for 4 years for free on weekends during my spare time, because nothing feels better than when someone calls and you can tell them, you're not alone, I know what to do. And sometimes that means sending people to the US, which is the last thing I wanted to just point out, that there is a significant access issue in Canada for later term abortions. We know this. Action Canada, ARC, and I will give a shout out to Joyce Arthur. Oh my God. Mixing up names, NAF Canada, Jill Doctoroff. Shout out to Jill for all the amazing work you have done in the last couple of years to make abortion accessible for so many people. Thank you. And we will keep pushing. But right now there are people flying to Boulder, Colorado. I have paid for passports myself out of pocket for folks, because sometimes you don't know you're pregnant or a really serious thing happens and you need help. And that's where we're sending them. And that's not okay. So as a country, we need to fix that, because we have a white supremacist state to the south of us, and we can either choose to be complicit with them, or we can choose to do something and wrap people in love.
I could just feel the passion coming through my headphones, and I'm so grateful that you're here on the panel today. Robyn, you kind of alluded to this, and I'd like to put this back in front of Joyce and Meghan as well. You're sort of alluding to, whoever needs to hear this, or if somebody hears this, or if you're listening to this, we know that this podcast is going to find its way to women in particular that where this issue applies very directly. And so I feel like it would be remiss, Joyce, if I didn't ask you to start here with a message to whomever this conversation may reach. What do you think is the most important message for somebody to hear that's listening to all of this? There's a lot of noise around stories like this, and people are trying to boil it down to the most important or key or crucial detail. They can apply it to their own lives. What would, in closing, your message be?
Well, that's a tall order, but I think, people just need to be aware of their rights, so they can never take them for granted. We always have to keep fighting back. And I think, there was this huge movement, a pro-choice movement back in the 70s and 80s, and that is, at least somewhat dissipated now, as Robyn mentioned. But I think it is still there. We can still mobilize people. I've seen it happen in the past when there's been private member bills introduced, for example, in Parliament. So we can go there again. And I think people just need to be more politically active, hopefully, and not be apathetic or complacent about our rights, because you never, ever can be. They can be taken away. We saw that, the shock of the Donald Trump election and some of the more extreme abortion bans being passed in the U.S. and the effects that that's had on people. It's just devastating. And it's serious. It's not just about, a woman's right to abortion. It's much, much wider than that. As Meghan was talking about, it's about reproductive justice and all the other issues, economic justice. They're all connected. Everything's connected. And if, reproductive rights are taken away, it doesn't affect just, people with uteruses. It affects everyone, because they're talking in the U.S. about, they're going after the right to contraception next, gay marriage, maybe even interracial marriage, because they're all based on the right to privacy. So all these rights are connected, and we can't separate them. And we can't just, slot it in as like a narrow women's issue. That doesn't work. It's everyone's issue. We need to get everyone involved and aware and fighting for their rights.
Yeah, and Joyce, you may have said that 2 weeks ago, and some people would have said, "Come on, Joyce, you're fear-mongering, Joyce. Nobody's coming after gay marriage. Nobody's coming after interracial marriage, Joyce." And then you've got Alicia, who's watching us live right now on our chat. She says it makes you wonder about any politician during an election who's screamed, that the Liberals keep trying to conjure up boogeymen by bringing up the so-called settled issue of abortion. Alicia says it's not so foolish now, is it? Meghan, last word to you.
Thanks. I think just building off of the conversation and what Joyce and Robyn have saying, to get involved with different organizations in your community, and whether it's migrant rights, economic justice, the right to housing, sexual and reproductive rights, feminist organizing, all of these things all help to contribute to create an environment in which we can claim our rights and hold the government accountable for our rights in such a way that it cannot be hijacked by these anti-rights and anti-human rights, anti-gender, all of it, the anti-choice movement, right? We need to create the environment that makes those things impossible to take away, and we need to support each other in how we do that.
That is Meghan Doherty, Director of Global Policy and Advocacy at Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights. Joyce Arthur joining us. And by the way, Joyce, a shout out to you. You woke up early. You're joining us from the West Coast. You deserve a little extra credit, my friend. Founder and Executive Director for the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada, and Robyn Schwarz, who's joining us as well out of Southwestern Ontario, an academic and community organizer. And our thanks to all three of them. You can find out more information on what they're doing. Of course, we share the web links to their research and to their organizations on their fonts if you're watching on YouTube, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Real Talk RJ and follow all their Twitter handles. Thanks very much. This conversation, of course, will continue, and that includes your takes on this, your opinions. We want to know where Real Talkers are at with this, and how are you wrapping your mind around what you're seeing when it comes to these stories. This one in particular is resonating around the world. It's a big deal, and I think that we underestimate the significance of something like this at our own peril. I don't think that it is appropriate, and I don't think it's accurate, and I don't think that it's a position of sincerity, to say the very least, for politicians to say this is something happening in a foreign court, in a foreign land, and so we're not going to comment on it, right? That's what Alberta's Premier had to say about it yesterday. I saw somebody on our chat, I apologize, I can't reference who you are, it's long since disappeared, but somebody essentially said, so now some politicians, including Alberta's Premier, so now they don't want to comment on anything outside of Alberta's borders or outside of Canadian borders. So now they don't want to comment on decisions by foreign courts. So now they don't want to comment on developments stateside and how they might apply to Canada. Isn't that convenient? talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can send us an email. Of course, our inbox is open 24 hours a day. Our friends at Grand Dog Essentials Quality Raw Food want to put on your radar a couple of things that they're offering, in addition to the quality raw dog food that they're known for. The food that keeps your pups feeling healthy, their guts looking good, their coat looking amazing. Everybody says to us, our black lab Monroe, they say, what do you do to get her coat looking like that? We say it's Grand Dog Essentials. But if you check out their website, granddog.ca, that's where you can place your order for weekly to-your-door delivery. You can also find some of the other things that they offer, like bovine colostrum. Did you know that environmental allergies can affect your dog, too? Chronic itching, biting at their paws. If this sounds familiar, you may want to look into bovine colostrum. And they've also got a new blog post. You go to granddog.ca, you just click on blog. Why is my dog refusing their food? It happens, but you might be surprised at the reasons why. You know, the promo code RealTalk at granddog.ca gets you 10% off your first time order with weekly delivery to Metro, Calgary, and Edmonton areas. They're passing through Red Deer, too, and they can drop off at your door. Our friends at Kubi Energy, you can find them online at kubienergy.ca, want us to remind you that they are always hiring. They're not some big, boring corporation where you're a cog in the machine. You're just an employee number. You make a direct impact to the company as you help bring clean energy development to Canada. Plus, kind of a neat development as they look to attract the best and the brightest installers, sales. I mean, it's a big company that's always growing. They offer a Bitcoin investment savings plan. How cool is that? A tool and boot allowance, employee referral programs, and a lot of other things that you can opt into if you're an employee at Kubi Energy. Athabasca University is Canada's online university with world-class accredited online programs and courses. We're going to be checking in with some experts from Athabasca University in the days and weeks to come to reiterate to you how much of a research center that is, a research hub across the country. Canadians are also tapping into not just the micro courses and the programs, but also the full-blown degree programs. You can turn your life around today. Maybe strap yourself in, buckle up for an advancement in your career with new learnings from your time on your pace at athabascau.ca. Eden Landscaping, this is the biggest and the most exciting time of year for them because it means they're blowing the dust off their shovels, they're getting the boots out, they're firing up the machines, and they're getting set to bring outdoor spaces to life. But over the 20 years or so that they've been family-owned and operating, there have been trends that have come and gone. Their goal is to always stay ahead of them, and that includes their urban butterfly yard approach. This is a very cool new initiative that more and more of their customers are asking about. It helps out the pollinators, the bees, basically, and of course also celebrate some of the native grasses and plants that you might have found many years ago in your neck of the woods. Eden Landscaping's tapping into all that. You can check out their portfolio and contact them for a quote at landscapeedmonton.ca. Not surprised to see a lot of engagement on our live chat following our conversation there with Robyn Schwarz, with Joyce Arthur, and with Meghan Doherty. And my thanks to the three of them for joining us. Stephanie says what's happening in the U.S. will absolutely affect us in Canada because of the conservative movement across provinces. Meantime, Hawes says, well, as long as our Supreme Court remains left-leaning, I'm not too worried. Jillian says the truth is this will never happen in some provinces in Canada, and it's already happening in others. Brenna says Jason Kenney ain't no friend of reproductive rights. Ashley says the fact that this is still a debate makes me rage. Says Ashley, stay out of my uterus. Others of you are continuing that conversation online, and I appreciated Alicia's comment earlier when Alicia talked about fear-mongering, so to speak. When she talked about the fact that this does tend to, a woman's right to choose or access to abortions does come up in Canada, most especially around election campaigns, most especially hurled toward the Conservative Party of Canada, regardless of who the leader is. You remember Erin O'Toole navigating that. You remember Andrew Scheer struggling with that question before. And of course, now it's relevant during that conservative leadership race. And we know that a lot of reporters will be chomping at the bit to speak to, in particular, I think on this one, Pierre Poilievre. You saw some of the lesser known conservative leadership candidates yesterday coming out with statements reiterating their support for women's rights to health access. It's a story we'll continue to cover, and of course, we will continue to ask for your takes on this as you help us guide the editorial process of this show. We're really excited to be the opening night presenting sponsor at this year's edition of NorthwestFest. Who You Gonna Call is opening up this year's edition of Canada's longest-running documentary film festival. The screening goes live at Metro Cinema this Friday at 7 o'clock. It celebrates the remarkable career of Ray Parker Jr. Here's a quick look.
I was in Los Angeles doing a new edition. I'm having lunch at Spago's, and I look up to my left, and there's a poster, black poster, and every time I go to Spago's for lunch, they're putting some paint and something else on. I'm like, the heck is this black poster up here? There's nothing on it except black. Next thing I know, they put like a red part of a circle, and I couldn't figure out what's going on. My telephone rings, and it's Gary LaMelle, and he said, I got this one film that we really need a song for. We're out of time. It's got to happen like really, really fast. It's called Ghostbusters.
Yeah, that's right. Ray Parker Jr. is the genius that brought the world the Ghostbusters theme song, but he is so much more than that. As his story is told in Who You're Gonna Call, it's a film put together by the great Fran Strine, who also joins us live this morning. Gentlemen, to the both of you, welcome to Real Talk. We're very excited, if I can speak on behalf of my fellow Edmontonians, to welcome you to our home city on Friday for this screening. Ray, did you always feel when it came to this story like there was a documentary feature just waiting? The remarkable nature of not just how this song and this project came together, but everything in your life that led to that opportunity?
Believe it or not, no, I never really considered it. In fact, I got to tell you, I'm getting old too fast. I mean, I'm starting to hear about all these things that it's like, when did I do that? I guess I was busy doing it and not thinking about it.
Well, absolutely amazing. I had a chance to check out the film ahead of time and your story. My producer, Johnny, and I were talking about this before the two of you joined us. I mean, your stardom launched relatively early in life. You talk in the film about how, your parents really wanted you to go to college, but you're 17 going on 18 years old, and you're already sharing a stage on tour with Stevie Wonder, Mick Jagger, the Rolling Stones. Absolutely wild stuff. As a teenager, probably tough to have the context at the time, but did you realize something special was already happening?
Now that I did. I did realize something special was already happening. And because I come from Detroit, Michigan, which is an automobile town. So everybody else I knew was trying to work in an automobile factory, and I wasn't even close to that.
It just wasn't your style, hey? You just weren't feeling it. You felt a calling to something different.
Yeah, I want to play the guitar.
Yeah, amazing stuff. And the film shows how you've carried on that passion and how you continue to put those opportunities in front of young people, the next generation of singer-songwriters, which is a really special part of the project. Fran, what was it about Ray's career, or what was it about that song, maybe that iconic song? What was it that put this on your radar? And not just as a story when you went, isn't that cool? But a story where you said, I want to dedicate time and resources and my own talents to telling this story in documentary film.
Right. So you have to remember, previous to Who You're Gonna Call, I did a film called Hired Gun, which featured session and touring musicians. And I brought Ray with me all around the world. He was featured in that movie for a little bit to promote the film. And we had a flight to Australia, 16 hours from Los Angeles. So he starts telling me more of his life story. And right then and there, I knew that this was going to be the next film I was going to make. And I hit the ground running as soon as I got back to the States. And we're happy to share it on Friday night.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And we're, in a few minutes, going to let our audience know how they can earn their way into that theater on Friday night. We're very much looking forward to having a packed house there. Ray, you start your story, or at least Fran does, the way that the film unfolds, talking about Detroit at the time that you were a young man growing up, and you talk about being with your dad, being out with your dad, and you're walking somewhere, and your dad heels around, he turns around, and you ask, why are we changing direction? He says, well, because there's a riot. And ultimately, the reality of that unrest got pretty personal to you at times.
Oh yeah, that was really, really crazy. And I'll never forget that day. We were going on fish.
We may be having a connection issue with Ray. We'll hope that that'll sort itself out. Fran, let me ask you, in putting that story together, obviously those experiences that Ray and his family had in urban Detroit, right around that time, a time of great civil unrest, went a long way in shaping his talents and shaping his world perspective. What was that like for you as a filmmaker to start to better understand that part of his history?
Early on, I knew that we must make a trip to Detroit to go investigate that part of his life. And we did. And I'm so glad that we did, because it really, I think, brings home the message of why he's such a great guitar player. Because instead of going out playing sports and basketball and football with his friends, he was in his house scared, to get beat, and got his 10,000 hours of guitar playing in and learned from some of the greats, as sad as that is, but it's the truth. And when we were there, I've known Ray a long time now, and he's a really happy, positive guy. But as soon as he starts talking about that era, you can see it in his face, especially in the film. It's pretty sad. And yeah.
Yeah, Ray, you Fran just mentioned it, and we're good to have you back here. But Fran mentioned those 10,000 hours when you're at home by yourself. Yeah. You'd experienced violence at the hands of police officers. You detail that in the film, but you didn't let it break your spirit. Music became something very special for you, didn't it?
Yeah. Music was my way out, I think. I mean, music was my way out mentally and my way to deal with everything.
So when it comes time to, you're on the road and you have an opportunity to tour with Stevie Wonder, you're touring with the Rolling Stones, you end up working, like Barry White, you had a major role, and I kind of don't want to spoil the whole film. People need to see it for themselves, but you're working with Bill Withers, you're working with literally the biggest names in music at the time. But you felt this. You were regarded by many as the world's best rhythm guitar player, and you were certainly having a lot of input in the creative process of these artists. But you still felt like this needed to be the Ray Parker Jr. show. At what point did you realize you no longer wanted to be a session musician?
About 21 years old, when my mother told me she didn't know what the heck I was doing. She didn't really understand what it was that I was doing. So I wanted to get my picture on the cover. What's that song? I keep getting richer, but I can't get my picture on the cover of the Rolling Stone. I always like that.
Yeah, no kidding. So this opportunity comes up for you to write this iconic song. The song that would essentially, your career trajectory was already impressive, and you had contributed to albums that had sold millions, tens of millions of copies, but you get this phone call on a shortened time frame to put together a song for a film that at the time maybe you didn't know much about, Ghostbusters. When did you know that this would become a life-transforming experience or opportunity for you?
After it did.
Wow.
No one knew ahead of time. We were clueless.
Fran, why do you think that song resonated like it did? Part of it obviously had to do with the success of the film, but still, it was the top song of the year 1984. It was number one globally. That doesn't happen with the theme song for every successful film. What was it that set Ray's piece apart? Who are you going to call?
If you listen to the song and really break it down, and I didn't think about this until I interviewed the legendary Holland Dozier Holland, but Brian Holland told me, he goes, man, if you listen to Ghostbusters, it's got about 50 different hooks in it, from the opening, the drum beat, the lyric, the call and response. And he's right. I sat down and analyzed, and I'm like, man, the saxophone section, just, the guitar lick, just everything just hits you all at once. And it was just this, I don't know, it's in a pantheon of theme songs, and it did really well. And I got to tell you, when I interviewed Ivan, the late Ivan Reitman, he told me as soon as he heard it, he goes, this is a hit. He knew right away.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, Clive Davis, I don't think really thought it was a hit, right, Ray?
Yeah, no, not in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, by the way, Clive Davis in the film, still just Captain Cool. I can't even believe it. It's so cool to have Ivan Reitman and Clive Davis. You got Stevie Wonder, and you got all of these. These people. It's just a really remarkable story. But Ray, you know what? Honestly, one of my favorite parts of the film is when you're in the school. It looks to me like about junior high school aged, and you're with these kids in the room. And
that's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, can you talk about the next generation of artists and you explain to them how your setup was different than theirs? I mean, you walk into their band room, or you walk into their music room, and you're in awe of what's in there and the resources that they have. But what do you see with today's youth in the context of what you think fosters or stimulates musical genius?
Yeah, we had clarinets and flutes. They got guitars and bass drum sets now. And what's even more amazing is the teachers are letting them play modern music, which I think is way more interesting if you're learning how to play than just playing the old classics from overseas. So I think the kids today, they show a lot of promise. And every time everybody thinks that the ball game is over and music is going down the tubes, then you hear exciting kids like that learning to play new things. And you know that there is some hope for the world.
Yeah, no kidding. Fran, in closing, I'm interested to pick the brain of storytellers, of people that have put films together, telling the story of someone else. What's something that you learned about Ray through the course of putting this film together that you didn't know before? What's one thing that's stuck with you to this day? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
I got to tell you, man, it was of all the stuff we talked about on the flight to Australia, the one thing he failed to mention was that he played on Bill Withers' Lovely Day. And I didn't know until we were at his house one day, and the door knocks, and there is Bill Withers. And I couldn't have been, you might as well just slap me across the face when I opened the door, and there's Bill Withers standing there at the studio door, with Jeffrey Osborne and what's the keyboard player, Ray, that played?
Rick.
Yeah, it was shocking. And then Bill Withers, just the coolest dude on the planet, had the strongest handshake I've ever felt in my life. Just a great dude, and he gives life lessons, to raise kids. He was just a wonderful human being. That's something I'll never forget.
Yeah. I have so many things I want to talk to you about the film, but I kind of don't want to spoil it because a lot of the things I want to bring up contribute to the story arc. And so what we'll do, I'm really excited to be able to be hosting this event on Friday night at Metro Cinema. So Fran and Ray, you and I are both going to get to hang out along with the audience. We're going to screen that film opening night at NorthwestFest. Opening night, that's Friday at 7 o'clock. And then we'll have a Q&A after, and we'll be able to dig a little bit deeper into this. Very much looking forward to it. I have to let the two of you go. Number one, Ray's connection is interrupted right now. It's a good thing that he froze on a beautiful smile. So there you go. And Fran, I know both of you have got to get on a flight, and so we're going to cut you loose for now, but we're excited to have you come into Edmonton. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. That's filmmaker Fran Strine and Ray Parker Jr. I'm looking forward to the in-person stuff. This is why we love in-person stuff, because the connections don't get interrupted.
That's what I love to hear. Bill Withers? Like, come on.
Oh, man. I mean,
he just comes to your house?
Bill,
a lovely day? He sang on the song? That's crazy.
Well, it's, and I don't want to, I keep saying this. I don't want to wreck the film, but.
I didn't know any of that.
So Stevie Wonder calls him. And the whole story is in the film. So it was this classic story. You've heard the story a million times from people who are about to get their big break. Although he already kind of had he'd already had big breaks. Ray had.
Sure.
Like he was all over everybody's radar when he's like 15 years old. He's a session musician. He's recording on albums. He was in high demand as like a 15, 16-year-old. People are going, there's just something different about this kid and the way he plays guitar. But he's a young man, and he gets a phone call from Stevie Wonder, and he's like, yeah, right. I mean, you've heard this, right? So
Right.
He hangs up on him. And then the phone rings again, and he's talking the same voice, and he goes, "Hey, it's Stevie Wonder," and he's like, "Yeah," and then he just hears him picking away. He hears him, and the opening to Superstition, boom, boom, boom,
No.
boom, 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 and he goes, "Oh my God, I hung up on Stevie Wonder." And Stevie Wonder says, you don't hang up on me twice. And anyway, so amazing stories. We're going to be telling them.
Incredible.
We'll get him to tell them on Friday night. Again, we're proud opening night presenting sponsors of NorthwestFest. It's Canada's longest running documentary film festival. You can get more details on all the the lineup, like some amazing, amazing films coming up. On the Fringe, that's closing night on May 14th, celebrating Canada's love affair with Fringe festivals. This Much I Know to Be True, a documentary that goes on May 11th for big fans of Nick Cave to see the process of creating an album. Kaepernick and America, the story, the intersection of Colin Kaepernick's anthem protests and the reactions that they spurred in the United States and beyond. That's May 12th. May 7th, The Long Rider, the story of Felipe Light, an aspiring journalist who left his adopted home of Canada to ride from Calgary to his family's home in Brazil on horseback. The Long Rider. I mean, these are just some selections. There's a whole bunch of them at northwestfest.ca. We have some tickets to give away for real talkers that would like to join us Friday night. To check out who you're going to call to qualify to win, all you have to do is send us an email right now to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We have 5 pairs of tickets to give away. Talk@ryanjesperson.com. Send us a quick note and reference that you'd like to be entered to win 2 tickets to Friday night's screening at Metro Cinema. Coming up in just a second, we'll dig into the results of our most recent question of the week. This is presented by our friends at Y Station, our official research and strategy partners. But before we get to that, I want to talk to the families that right now qualify in that sandwich generation. You hear this, people talking about it a lot. You're maybe from sort of like 35 to 55 years old right now. You're looking out for your parents. You're looking out for your kids at the same time. And you know that there are resources in place. You're sure you've heard about them, these home care resources where you can take all that worry, you can take that sort of cloud that sits above your head wondering if mom or dad or auntie or uncle are getting the care they need, getting their meds, eating their food. Is the place clean? Do they have clean laundry? I mean, these are just real-life questions for people you care about. Infinity Healthcare does this on a daily basis with the most reputable, reliable, credible caregivers you're going to find. Infinity Healthcare also always hiring. If you are a caregiver looking for work, your journey could lead you to Infinity Healthcare. All you're going to do right now is check out the sponsors tab on our website or infinity-8.ca. Career opportunities is the drop-down menu you're looking for. And of course, their personality matching service, a great resource for families that want to have confidence in their home care. Our friends at Friesen Brothers are getting excited about the season to grill. That's right, 'tis the season, and I'd like to personally recommend the Friesen Brothers barbecue sauce. It could be the world's best. You can find out more details at friesen.com or go check it out in store. They've got the original, the hickory, the chicken and rib, and the honey garlic. You're smirking like you feel like that's a bold claim on my part.
I'm going on Sunday. Because this is a tall order.
Have you tried that? Like when they stamp their name on their barbecue sauce, you know it's going to be good,
right?
I tried the hickory a while ago, the original, still my personal favorite. I'm just an OG guy. The Friesen Brothers original barbecue sauce could be the world's best, and you'll find it at Friesen Brothers, 16 locations across the province of Alberta. Friesen Brothers, I do happen to know that they're big on community. They talk about it all the time. And you know who else is big on that? Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge. I talked to them about, what do you want the real talkers to focus on? What do you want our messaging to focus on? They always talk about relationships. They talk about their return customers. They talk about the fact that their service department knows many of their customers by first name. They've had relationships with some of the families that continue to frequent their shops for years. Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge has your best selection of Dodge, Jeep, including, of course, those Ram 1500s that everybody's buzzing about right now. I'm loving my Longhorn edition. You can browse their inventory online or in person. You'll find them again under the sponsors tab on our website. Well, every week we ask you to chime in, and hundreds of you do. We appreciate it on our Get Real question of the week. It's presented by our official research and strategy partners at Y Station, and this past week, we left it open for a week and a half. We wanted to give you a chance to chime in on the leadership review that Alberta's United Conservative Party is seeing right now. Premier Jason Kenney, his leadership in review. We wanted to ask you where you think it's going, whether or not you have faith in the process, what you think the implications are. And here's what you had to say. Let's take a look, Johnny. 74% of respondents believe that the change to the mail-in ballot structure will give the premier a major advantage. 3 out of 4 respondents believe that to be true. That's an interesting point. Just 12% of respondents to this survey, more than 600 of you, thought the results of the leadership vote would still be reliable given the last-minute change in format. That number is Significantly lower than what I thought it might be. 12% with faith in the process. How about this? 2 out of 3 of you, 67% of respondents agreed that if Jason Kenney does not survive the leadership review, the factions of this party, of his United Conservative Party, will tear the party apart before the next election. That's a pretty interesting one. 43% of respondents thought that the premier would try to call a snap election if he loses the leadership vote. 43% of you. And this is probably the one that I was most eager to see where Real Talkers would land. The premier has said on the record he believes that he needs 50% support plus one. 50% plus one support. We asked you, what do you think that Jason Kenney needs to survive? What's the survivable number as UCP leader? You landed on 60.1%. 60.1%. We asked you then, what do you think he will get? Now, the premier says he needs 50% plus one, and Real Talkers, cumulatively, you can't cook this stuff up.
I like it.
Land at 49.96%, so 0.05% off what he says he needs to stay. Now, we always ask you for final comments. We leave an area blank, and we say anything else. And here's what some of you had to say. One of you said, this is the most interesting thing that has happened in Alberta politics in a long, long time. It's fun in the making, and it's fun to watch. I don't know if it's the most interesting thing that's happened in a long time in Alberta politics. That's saying a lot, but it certainly is interesting, isn't it? Another one of you said we need collaboration with all levels of government, and this divisiveness has no positive. Another one said it really sucks to care about Alberta right now, to have skin in the game, to have kids to worry about. Our leadership is costing us all so very much. Another one of you said that Albertans are angry, and rightfully so. And how about this one from a Real Talker that said there will not be a positive outcome for the UCP. No matter the results, the divisions will fracture and split the party and its members. This will open the door for people to rethink voting obligations once again. I think you're right. They say maybe the Alberta Party will become an option like the NDP was in 2015. Remember, they're referencing the election lead up to 2015 when the NDP had just 4 MLAs. They say the NDP has the advantage at the moment, but when people are upset and they've tried the PCs, they've tried the Wild Rose, the NDP, and even the United Conservatives, maybe another party can earn enough support to be a difference maker in the legislature. Yeah, the Alberta Party fighting like hell. We know that leader Barry Morishita, he's been on the show before, traveling all over the province, looking to recruit strong candidates. They want 87 of them for the next election. And, of course, the donations and the support. You've got to build these strong constituency associations, right? You don't win an election overnight. It takes, of course, a lot of that ground game. It takes a lot of the less glamorous work behind the scenes. Will that resonate? Remains to be seen. We have a lot of political scientists and experts that are coming on this show, commentators, John, that are telling us, well, they're pretty sure that Alberta right now is a 2-party province moving forward, but I know some supporters of the Alberta Party would beg to differ. So this week's edition of the Real Talk Get Real Question of the Week, we're asking you about Johnny's favorite subject. We're asking you about the story that Johnny can't stop talking about. If you go to RyanJesperson.com and you click on Question of the Week, you'll find Tesla and SpaceX owner Elon Musk has made a $44 billion offer to buy Twitter. It's an offer the board has agreed to recommend to shareholders. This has set Twitter ablaze. This week, we want you to sound off on the potential sale and what it means. On purpose, we've kept this Question of the Week quick and punchy, so it takes you like 1 minute to complete it.
I like it.
Yeah, we'd love to hear a whole bunch of, we'd love to see about 1,000 of you chime in on this one so we get a good sense of where everybody's at.
And you can't get away from it. New stuff every day. Did you see the story? Rumors that his first two, here's the story here, that he's made a few decisions. We don't know who, but he's going to have a new CEO and sharing some ideas, exactly what you thought. He's going to try and make some money, monetize some tweets, which will be in the form of, so when you go to a website, Ryan, and you see a tweet embedded, you're going to have to maybe pay for that towards Twitter to use that on a website. So.
Well, I don't suspect that he acquired the company without any plans or any aspirations to tweak the monetization model.
Yeah.
Like billionaires don't typically become billionaires by accident.
100%.
But I also saw an interesting take on that. I wish I had this in front of me because I can't even credit who it was. I don't even remember who it was. But somebody was ruminating how, you'd see, for example, Jeff Bezos, who goes ahead and buys the Washington Post based on certain principle or based on a business perspective or based on something that he sees that made him want to add the Washington Post to his business empire. And how this scenario, this person had sort of got the sense that this was a little bit different, that Elon Musk, if you wanted to use the newspaper model, was more the person that kept writing letters to the editor, but they weren't getting published, they weren't getting printed,
100%.
so he just decided to buy the paper.
He might be using it as his own personal playground is what I'm afraid of, which we don't want to happen. I mean,
well, he's been having a lot more fun on Twitter lately, Elon Musk has,
tweets,
which I guess it would probably impact your perspective a little bit when you've just bought the damn thing,
he's
or
talking
you're
about
on your way
buying
to
other
buying
things and making other things better. Coca-Cola.
Yeah, he wants to put the cocaine back in Coca-Cola.
Doritos. He wants to fill the bags all the way to the top.
Some people, fingers crossed that he might actually be serious about
Right?
it. You can't really rule anything out with this guy.
No.
You know?
And I think that's the part where I'm a little bit, just a little bit fearful. It's like one day you open Twitter and I don't know. It's gonna be different.
I guess we can always walk away. That's one of the interesting things about Twitter is everybody's treating it as absolutely integral. That's something you can't just walk away from. But I think that says a lot, and I'm probably one of those people. Twitter's important to our business. Twitter's important to, I think, public dialogue. It has become that sort of de facto town hall or the town square people keep talking about. These
apps get to that point where they're like ingrained in the fabric of our everyday lives. And so, I don't know if I like just a billionaire run. He puts up fun tweets, but I don't know. Some of them I'm like, these are kind of cheesy. So.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. We had an interesting roundtable or an interesting panel discussion a few days back on the show with the potential pros and cons of an Elon Musk Twitter takeover, and you can let us know what you think about that. Dr. Amy Morrison and Beverly Teresa joined us. Beverly's a social media strategist, and Amy, with her Ph.D. work, has been fascinating. She studied kind of social media and how people present themselves online and how social media translates to or reflects folks' identities. Like, she's got a really interesting area of study. If you missed that was one of our shows we did live from Jasper just a few days ago. You can find it on our podcast archives, and of course you can also find it on our YouTube channel. Before we move on, I wanted to let you know that spots are filling up fast for our first annual, it's our inaugural Real Talk Golf Classic. It goes Thursday, June 23rd, tee off, shotgun start at 2 o'clock in support of the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship. We want you to be there. And so you go to our website, RyanJesperson.com, you click on events, and there you see it, the Real Talk Golf Classic. It's really easy to find. You can find more information there on the event that'll go at the Ranch Golf and Country Club, again, Thursday, June 23rd. It's very easy to register. You click on register today. You can get your foursome signed up. Heck, if you want to bring the whole office out, why not sign up for 2 or 3 foursomes? And of course, we're also looking for sponsors and volunteers. It's a great sponsorship opportunity to put your brand in front of a bunch of engaged people, but also to contribute to that scholarship fund that's going to do amazing work, providing tuition payments, providing $5,000 cash to one student, post-secondary student every year, a minimum of one student registered in a post-secondary program, a student that has lost a parent to cancer. This per Julie's wishes, the founding member of our editorial board. That's Thursday, June 23rd, the Real Talk Golf Classic at the Ranch Golf and Country Club. Go to RyanJesperson.com. Events, the events link to learn more. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Kaleo Collective. We talked to them earlier this week about their Mother's Day initiative.
Yeah.
And I get home, and my wife, Carrie at CarrieSkelton.com. She's a lifestylist, and you can find. She says that's so great that you had Kaleo Collective on the show, and I go, oh yeah. I said, you know about that, and she looks at me and she goes, they're my charity of choice for the year ride. And I went, right. And she said, yeah, if you want to mention to people that they can learn more about what Kaleo Collective is doing, in particular this Love You Mama event, which is doing really incredible things for the kids of single moms, making Mother's Day even just that much more special. Carrie says you can refer people to CarrieSkelton.com and learn more about why they've got that charitable partnership and why my beloved cares so much about Kaleo Collective. Again, CarrieSkelton.com. I wanted to mention that on the show.
Gotta pay attention, Ryan.
I gotta pay close attention.
I know you're busy, but
there's so many things to pay attention to. But I walked in the door and she kind of had that like mixed feeling look. She's like, that's so great you featured them. And she's like, why didn't you mention our partnership? And I was like, I will circle back and mention our partnership. We're going to take you out to Jasper in just a second. But before we do, I want to remind you that this is the kind of moment where maybe you realize that you're paying a little bit more for something than you need to. You know, we have these moments in our lives. Well, when it comes to your internet, electricity, and natural gas, are you one of those hundreds of thousands of Albertans? Are you one of the millions of Canadians that have seen your cost of living going way up, and that includes your utilities? Why not make today the day that you take 5 minutes and visit parkpower.ca to compare rates on electricity, internet, and natural gas? Not only are you probably going to find a better option, including the fixed rate option, but you're also going to have a chance to bundle your services and save on administrative costs. Those are sometimes the ones that send your bill through the roof. Don't forget, when you're signing up, and write this down or text it to yourself, that's what I do, 2022-Real Talk is the promo code you need to save $70 off your first bill at parkpower.ca. Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. Our friends at Dairy Queen encourage you to treat yourself. It's blizzard season, and that means a brand new blizzard lineup. Of course, there's the classic favorites. Johnny, every time I put this on Instagram or Twitter, somebody says, and what's your favorite? What's your classic blizzard? And mine have evolved and changed over the years. I used to just be a Smarties guy.
Yeah.
Then I got on the Score train, and now I'm realizing, how do you ignore the very cherry chip blizzard? Or how do you say no to the cotton candy blizzard? Or even the Reese's Pieces cookie dough blizzard.
The dirt pie.
The dirt pie blizzard treat has got to be the coolest one for kids, right? You've got the chocolate dirt, so to speak. You got the gummy worms in there. What a fun family outing you have in store waiting for you at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. That's Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and in Sherwood Park at Baseline Road. If you're looking to just get away from it all, if the thought of fresh mountain air does something to you viscerally right now, you're not going to want to miss this. Every Wednesday, our friends at Tourism Jasper allow us to take a few minutes out of our day and head to the mountains, so to speak, to celebrate Jasper National Park. We call it MyJasper Memories. And this week, we wanted to focus on and feature an opportunity that may not even be on your radar. You may be a hiker, you may be a backcountry camper, maybe you love just setting up at your favorite hotel at the lodge out there, but have you checked out Jasper's Motorcycle Tours? Unbelievably, when you look at the stunning opportunities here, a ridiculously photogenic tour, they call it. Your opportunity to see, in my mind, one of Canada's most magnificent national parks by motorcycle. That's right, with the wind in your hair and the mountains in your sights, the freedom, the wild joy of motorcycling is a dream held by many. And of course, Harley Davidson. I mean, you mention Harley. Do you just hear a Harley in your brain when you say the name?
Conjures it up.
I do. Whether you're a lifetime Harley fan or you just want to see what all the fuss is about, Jasper Motorcycle Tours will kit you out in full leathers. Of course, safety first, plus you're going to look good. They'll take you to some of Jasper National Park's most iconic landmarks while riding an iconic hog. Make sure you bring your camera. Of course, this is a very unique experience. Jasper Motorcycle Tours was actually the very first in North America to do Harley-Davidson sidecar tours. And the company's been distinguished by Destination Canada as an official once-in-a-lifetime signature experience. So you're obviously going to have an amazing guide with you, showing you all the sites, giving you all the background information, and ensuring that the experience is as safe and pleasant as possible. This is an opportunity, thanks to those sidecars, for people of all ages and all abilities, including people with mobility issues. Those that are in wheelchairs, for example, you can participate and experience the thrill of riding. Each sidecar can carry 2 guests. And of course, those tour guides are no strangers to finding the safe places to pull over and snap photos. They're happy to do it for you. They've got a 5-star TripAdvisor rating, a certificate of excellence. There is no safer and more entertaining way to hammer the highway. I love it. You can learn more about this by checking out jasper.travel/realtalk. jasper.travel/realtalk. You can learn more about the motorcycle tours and go along on the previous features that you may have missed here every Wednesday on the show. It's MyJasper Memories, presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. We've got a big show in store tomorrow. I'm looking forward to checking in with Chris Boozy. Chris is the founder of a company called Bot Sentinel. He's an expert on determining which Twitter accounts are legit and which ones aren't. They've been studying the developments on the social media site since the announcement that Elon Musk was buying in. Plus, we're going to talk about the stigma or eliminating stigma around the word fat. And she's been called one of the most influential literary voices of her generation. Author Angie Thomas joins us live on Thursday's Real Talk. We'll see you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, technical producer John Hicks, managing director Josh Dunford, account coordinator Lawrence Sterlego, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is the flagship property of Relay Communications Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.